Hi, welcome to Just Out of Curiosity, a podcast that talks about sex and sexuality from the lens of a sex-positive brown woman that has a fascination with alternative or non-conventional lifestyles. My name is Shelly D, and I am that sex-positive brown woman. Over the course of several episodes, I'm excited to dive into topics that titillate my interests and make me ask my guests questions just out of curiosity. And so, my curiosity today leads to motherhood. I've pretty much been perpetually single my whole life and instead focused on embracing my sexuality and feminism. What it means to become pregnant feels a little far out to me. But what happens when one wants to move into parenthood? How do you bring back sex into your partnership after childbirth? What does postpartum mean to someone after they've given birth? While I have so many friends with kids and I love being a part of their lives, I recognize that the life of mothers or birthing parents is a tough one. When I was a kid, I used to look around at various events my family went to, and it appeared that the women were predominantly cooking, cleaning, and doing all the things I thought were so boring. I wanted to play and have fun and just do things. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized my ignorance. It's not that it was boring. Mothers got shit done. They always knew what was up before you even figured out that you should say something. There was a quiet strength and power that came from my mother. She didn't have to say much, but she pretty much knew everything. And I may still not like cooking and cleaning, but I look at my mother as well as other mothers or birthing parents with so much admiration and respect because, to me, they are the most powerful creatures on earth. They willingly choose to undergo a change to their body and hormones while they're pregnant and postpartum. The demands of a newborn that can't articulate its feelings, looking after the entire household, plus their partners and any other members living in the household. And if that wasn't enough, add on also going back to work. If I hated cleaning, who was doing it for me when I didn't? My mother. Because she, and I hope yours or your chosen mother or birthing parent, have our back in so many ways that I'll never know. I will also admit my privilege of having an amazing mother, an amazing grandmother, and some other chosen mothers along the way too. I'm a woman who is independent, has found her sexuality, and loves her body as is. I've always wanted to have children and thought of it, but would never really settle down with anyone to have them. But if I did, and the thought of finding the future parent of my child became a reality, part of me is so conflicted because I personally feel like I would have to exchange my sexuality for responsibility. Or do I? I had the pleasure of sitting down with my friend Blythe, a new mom. Blythe is someone who I describe as someone who is a beautiful soul inside and out. She too is someone who is sex positive and open about her sexuality. Her views of the world and people have resonated with me so much. When we first met, we would discuss what being a parent would look like as a sexual person and what that would mean to our lifestyle postpartum. Now that she's given birth, how does that present itself? Hi, Blythe. How are you?
I'm great, Shelly. How are you?
Good, thanks. So I heard you had a baby.
Yes, I did. Yes.
How many months old?
He's almost 4 months old.
How do you feel?
I feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to kind of get the whole, like, I feel like I've kind of got a handle on it now. Like, the newborn phase is a little bit hectic and sleep deprived and poop and throw up and everything, and now it's
all the liquids that come out.
Yeah. And then once they get used to one way of doing things, then they change their mind completely, and it's a completely different thing, and it's just kind of like rolling with the punches. But I feel like he's still alive, so
that's the most important thing.
Good, yeah.
Okay, so to back up a little bit, I've known you for a couple of years. We've worked together. Just to start things off, like, what are your preferred pronouns?
She, her.
Okay, perfect. And do you identify as someone who falls under the LGBTQ spectrum?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm under the B part of the spectrum.
Bisexual? Yeah. Same, likewise.
Yes.
Yeah. It is very weird, though. I'm going to go off on a slight tangent right now because I feel like bisexuality is such a weird concept to some people. And truthfully, I don't even really like calling myself bisexual. I call myself queer because I feel like maybe I don't feel like I quite belong inside the bisexual spectrum because I mainly go after men, and it's only unless like a woman that is flirting with me and talking with me is giving me some kind of vibe and energy, then I'll go with it. But I don't typically go after women. And so I feel weird saying I'm bisexual. And I don't really have this conversation with bisexual people. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on identifying as bi.
I think that quite like accurately sums up how I feel as well. I feel like we talked about this before, but like bisexual erasure within like both the straight and gay communities.
Yes.
And especially being in a heterosexual long-term relationship now with like a marriage and now with a baby. It's like all those things are socially heterosexual things. So it's kind of like I already felt like I was not occupying that space enough because I haven't like had a long-term relationship with a woman or again, like you said, it's more like I kind of, if it presents itself, okay, but was never something that like I explored in a long-term relationship or marriage sense as well. And then when you add the baby into it, it's kind of like, now it's like you've cemented your like decision in a lot of people's minds where it's like, it's okay, but it's not a choice. Like this is still who I am.
So it's almost like you lose your sense of sexuality or your bisexuality when you have a child with a heterosexual partner. Kind of?
Yeah. And I almost, it's weird because it's like, again, it's like feeling like you don't have a right to occupy that space.
Right. Yeah. Because, I was looking this up too, is there's such a lack of information or education and awareness about what it means to be a bisexual parent. I don't know if I can ask this question, but is your partner bisexual too?
No, he's not.
Okay. So it's, how do you look at that then when it's, I don't even know if that's the right question, but how do you, I guess it's hard to navigate that space when it's just you kind of not really, like you're in a hetero kind of space, but you have these, you identify as bisexual, your partner is heterosexual. What do you do when it comes, or how have you thought, if you have thought about parenting from that kind of viewpoint?
I think it's really, like, I don't think that your like sexual orientation plays into your parenting in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that it would be a positive in creating an inclusive environment and, teaching him that love is love from a very tiny age and always having that, you're like bringing him into queer spaces and having that be part of his like normalcy,
Yeah.
And then also the idea of like, as a gay parent or a straight parent, your sexual orientation is like given because based on your partner choice.
Yes.
But as a bisexual parent, then there could be a conversation about actually coming out to your child, which is a kind of a flip where, you'd hope that you create a space for your child where they would feel that they could come out to you. But then, so kind of there's like a parallel there that by perhaps coming out to your child, you're giving them that space that they could be open with you as well with whatever they're
right. Yeah, there's like bi erasure, I guess is what it's called.
Yeah.
It's like if you were with a woman, you would just be considered a lesbian, and
yes,
or the common thought is that you're a lesbian, and as opposed to when you're with a man, you're just assumed to be heterosexual.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must be really tough coming out multiple times, always feeling the need to come out.
Yeah,
and
repeatedly.
Yeah, and I've always thought about this because it feels like buckets. Like this is, I guess, maybe the hypocrisy or where it could go wrong is that there's the queer spectrum is teaching you that love is love is love, and that inclusion and diversity is what we should respect and think about the most. But then sometimes it feels like we like to put everything still in buckets within the queer spectrum, and so this notion of being bisexual means that either you're like, it's still kind of stigmatized to an extent because you're viewed as maybe selfish because you don't want to make the choice of settling down with one or the other, or you just you're greedy and you don't want to make that choice, so you're just going to live the life that you want to live and then kind of take up space in hetero spaces and take up space in queer spaces. But I also feel like we're judged by both.
Yeah. Well, the media doesn't really help that either. I feel like media portrayals of bisexuals are like, until fairly recently, we're always like, oh, like they're gonna come and steal your husband and your wife, like hypersexualized.
Like these crazy succubuses that are just that are going to take everyone away from everything.
Exactly.
I didn't actually think about that. That's a fair point. Because I do then think that as a bisexual parent, there's like this you will teach nothing but love and inclusion to your child because you understand what it's like to straddle both spheres and not really feel included in any of them. You've been othered by both. So you're going to do what you can. I feel like you would do what you can to not bring that onto your child.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to rewind a little bit because I do find this really interesting. In the last episode that I talked about, with a sexologist, we talked about the difference between performative sex and pleasurable sex. So like, you start life not really quite understanding your body. And I feel like women really, it's harder for them to understand what their body is like because there's so much stigma with touching yourself or like understanding what pleasure is. And then there's that moment of being pleasurable. And when you finally own your body and take agency of that and you allow space for someone else to like have a conversation with you what that looks like, you're then having great sex. But then what happens when you get pregnant? And like there's all these changes. This is so far beyond what I know in my scope. But there's body changes, there's hormone changes. Like what is that journey of like having a healthy sex life with your husband and then becoming pregnant and now having your newborn? Like what has that been for you?
I mean, it's definitely been a journey. You said it well. And it's like, I feel like I can like separate it all into segments, like trimesters, first trimester, second, third, like fourth trimester after giving birth. Like, I think, I mean, like the hormones really play a huge part in it. And I think also what you said too about like when you finally like discover your body and you're like, okay, this is what I like, this is what feels good. And then this massive change happens. Yeah. You're like, oh wow, okay, like I had this fear. I'm like, is this going to be how it's like forever? Like what's going to happen next? Like you don't really know. Mm-hmm. Like, is this for me forever? Like you're postpartum forever, right? But then like what that means is different to everybody too.
Was there something that really changed? Like the first most noticeable change maybe?
I mean, like physically I got boobs and like I was like, I get it now. Like this is awesome. It's like that has been really fun.
Yeah.
That's been great. I think hormonally, obviously everyone's experiences are very different. Mm-hmm. The pregnancy hormones reacted like very well for me, and I've always dealt with anxiety and depression, and that completely went away. And like my mental health was just
interesting.
Stellar. Yeah. And it was really helpful because before getting pregnant, I had a lot of anxiety around like being pregnant and having a baby and like what am I like the million things you're thinking about. Mm-hmm. And then it all kind of like fell away, and I was just very present and zen throughout my pregnancy, and I like really am grateful for that experience.
Yeah. Is that something, I don't know, is that something that's normal or that can happen? Like,
yeah.
Did you, okay.
I'm a researcher, so I read about all this. Yeah. So apparently it can be pretty common because your progesterone and your estrogen are super high, and both those are involved in creating dopamine and serotonin. So I think all your hormone levels are really high at that point. So
it almost kind of became an equilibrium in something that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that was great.
Yeah.
And that did translate to my sex life as well. I felt first and third trimesters not so much, because at the beginning I was like really tired and like not feeling very great.
I mean, your body's going through this crazy change that you're not used to.
And then third trimester I was just like big and sweaty and like just uncomfortable all the time with like 5 pillows around me. I built like a fortress in bed. I'm like, don't even touch me. But second trimester was great. It was just like I felt really good in my body. I had like curves where I never had before, and just really comfortable. And I'm also very grateful that it just happened very easily and that I kind of fell into that role naturally, because I know it's very different for a lot of people. So
I guess also having a really supportive partner would help as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was there anything that, not to say anything bad about Nick, because I think he's a great partner to you, but was there anything that was just like not bothering you, but like, you just wish that he could have understood about the process, because obviously they're not going to understand much of what you're going through.
Yeah. He has been like wildly supportive through all of it. There's one thing that you said, when you said that, it just clicked. At one point he said to me like, thank you for being the vessel. And I'm like, that's all I am now, is a vessel. I'm like, I know what you mean. Like, thank you for doing this, and thank you for bearing the physical burden of it all. But again, it's like that feeling that like I'm the second now, because my purpose is now to be a vessel to this unborn child. And that's, again, me just overthinking what he meant. But
it's also like words matter in this, and we all know we are vessels. Like,
I'm like, call me a vessel one more time. But I think, again, that's a societal thing too, right? That it's, we've been kind of conditioned that once you become a mother. And like, I think naturally, like I would, like literally the second after I'm holding him, I would throw myself in front of a bus for this baby. So
Right.
it is a natural thing that happens, but it's also like this feeling of erasure as well. Like as a woman, as a sexual being, now you've gone from the maiden to the mother. So
Yeah. And so that's all you're ever going to be. Hopefully not really, but
no,
yeah.
but
It is that weird, I guess, when you first realize this is what's actually happening to me now.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what has been your favorite part about motherhood?
Like, I mean, the baby's pretty great. Yeah.
He's very cute.
He's very cute. He seems like a happy guy. Finally, he started smiling. So I'm like, oh, you do like us. Like, this is finally, yeah, just a very like angry boss before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just like for myself, just kind of seeing this new layer of who I am that's been added to myself. Like I have this new layer of patience that I never thought I had. I've always been a very like, not a great sleeper, but I need to sleep a lot. And
Yeah.
that hasn't, it has been a lot better, but at the beginning it wasn't. And I was waking up every 2 hours to feed the baby. And I was just like, I'd hear him. I'm like, okay, like this is just what I'm doing now. And it's just how calm I was through it. I think that has to do with the hormones as well. So
Probably. But I guess there's that new, like, there's that level, like I always think that we're on this journey of life, trying to always be better and do better. And it's something that I won't know yet, hopefully, but you do change, and it's really interesting how natural that change can be, or maybe you're forced into it and you have no choice.
I think, yeah, it depends really on the circumstances. For me, it felt natural. And yeah, just to kind of like prove to myself that, oh, I can do this and I'm capable and this is,
Yeah.
I'm doing okay.
It's still alive. And
Yes,
doing a good
he's
job.
still alive. He seems happy. Yeah.
Has there been anything that surprises you about what it is to be a mother and having a newborn and this whole new life of yours?
I think like you can read all the books and you can, try and prepare yourself as much as you can, but really you don't really know what it's going to be like until it happens. And
Yeah.
I think, like really not having, one of the things I had to kind of like check myself at the beginning was expectations about my day. Even just like, okay, like I'm going to do the dishes and I'm going to work out. And it's like, no, today he's going to have 5 meltdowns and you're just going to be, or like you're going to be trapped under him while he's napping for 3 hours and that's just it. So now I just kind of have let go of any expectations of how my days should look. And
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we've had to reschedule this because yesterday it is not working.
yeah, exactly. And like, I think it's, again, like that's a great lessons for me in patience and flexibility.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting things when there was a time when this was a couple years ago where all my friends started getting pregnant, and then it was like my friendships changed with all of them, because now it just wasn't them that I was trying to do and see. It was their schedule around their baby, and every time it was like, baby's not having a good day, and I'm like, okay, I can't get upset at this. Like, I really can't get upset at this like newborn that really has no idea what they're doing in life. So yeah, it's interesting seeing, like, being an outsider looking in, like you realize that your expectations have changed, and then I have to respect that because it's not just you that's making those decisions anymore. It is, yeah, it's very fascinating to see, my friends becoming parents, because you also see the change in them as well.
And everyone does it differently too.
That's true. Yeah.
There's no rule book. It's just whatever works for you and your baby. Yeah.
On another note, has there been anything that has frustrated you more? Or like anything that's like, just things that you wouldn't have noticed that may, and bother you, if that's the right word. I know it's all just a learning process.
I think like with how much is out there with social media, like instantly when I got pregnant, all my algorithms changed, and it was like, oh, now I'm being inundated with all this baby stuff and pregnancy stuff, and this just so preachy. Everybody's extremely critical of what each other are doing all the time, and I've had to really like take a step back from that, because it's like I'm trying to consume information so I can literally learn how to keep this baby alive, but at the same time this is the only way to do it. You have to sleep train, you have to like,
there's a lot of momming shaming or parent shaming. Are you part of any mom groups?
Not like in-person ones. I was on a couple like forums but it's also because I got pregnant during the pandemic, so I'm like, oh yeah, I got stuck on these forums, and it was like at the time when the vaccines are coming out, and I'm just like, I was just like rage posting on these things, and I'm like, I need to like take a step back.
How was that? Like how there's something to be said about being pregnant, but then being pregnant during a pandemic when we're all at home, and especially in Toronto, like we were locked down. How was that?
I mean, I don't have anything to compare it to, so
Right.
but I'm grateful for that too, because I think if I did have an idea of what my pregnancy or like, you know, was supposed to look like because I'd experienced it before, then I might have felt differently.
Yeah.
I think obviously, like, you know, not being able to see as many friends and family as I would have liked to, and seeing them, like, see my belly grow and those experiences.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was able to have a shower during one of our not lockdowns,
Yes.
and you were able to attend. Yeah. So I definitely still got some of those experiences, but it was hard. Like, Nick wasn't able to come to any of my appointments, and I had to. So he never met our midwives.
Right.
I had to find like the one ultrasound clinic in the city that allowed partners to come, so that he could come and. It just like all of that. And then while I was about to give birth, like we were kind of like descending or going up into another wave. So I'm like checking every day to see if the hospital like regulations are changing.
Yeah.
And like we were luckily, Finn was born a few weeks early. So we kind of missed, there was like a further lockdown that happened where Nick would have been able to come, but I think he wouldn't have been able to leave the floor. So he couldn't get food or anything like that. So.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you went with a doula?
We had midwives.
Midwives, sorry.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to do a midwife?
So midwives start from a place that your birth is a natural process that people's bodies go through. And then if there is a problem, they escalate it to a medical procedure. And then after that, if there's an emergency, they escalate it to a medical emergency. Whereas an OB would start from a place of a medical procedure. So I was just hoping to like have the least amount of intervention as possible during pregnancy and birth.
Right. And I mean, I've been every episode I do more and more research, but I also have realized that medicine and science has come from like a male perspective, and not to knock them, and not to say that men can't be in the OBGYN space, but it's really hard to understand what a woman goes through if you don't understand what hormones mean and how everything actually affects them. And I remember when I first heard about doulas, like I thought it was like some woo-woo type. I don't know if you can trust these people. Like they just don't want to they don't want to go to med school, but you know they're going to deliver your baby and they're going to deliver it in like these weird ways. And now I've realized that no, they're not delivering it in weird ways. They're delivering it in ways that women probably want to have their child delivered in.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I don't know if they're recognized. Are they recognized?
Yeah, so they are licensed,
Okay.
but only like I think in the past like 20 years. Like it's fairly recent, I believe. But yeah, so they have to go to university for 4 years. There's a license involved.
Okay.
And because before you could have a doula or a midwife, you had to pay for them. Now you have to either choose an OB or a midwife, and it's covered by OHIP.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but then midwives they're pretty hard to come by, so like you have to apply. I applied to like 15 of them or something, and like I got called back by like 3, and then luckily my first choice we got.
I mean, but I think there were so many pregnancies during the pandemic that they probably were just so overwhelmed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely an under supply of them for the demand. So another thing I also thought about too is they have 6 weeks of postpartum care for the mother and baby.
Oh, that's nice.
Or parent and baby, yeah. And if you were to go through the medical system, like you give birth, here's the baby, and then you have a 6 weeks checkup after, which oftentimes is just talking about birth control, and that's it. Whereas like on our second day home, the midwife came to the house, and like I was in bed, and she did his checkup and everything there,
which is so probably so comforting to have.
Yeah, and it's like,
sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, and also just for mental health as well, like to have someone checking in on you.
Yeah.
Are you okay? How are you feeling? Like, how are you doing?
I was gonna say, like, to have that 6 week checkup with a doctor and just talk about birth control forms is probably not the conversation you want to have at that time. You would want someone to actually like care a little. You'd want to have someone care a little bit more about who you are and just check in with you.
Exactly.
And I guess they don't do that.
No.
That's tough. It's hard being a mom sometimes.
Well, and it's difficult too because it's obviously everyone's individual choice. And like you said, a lot of people don't feel comfortable with midwives because they would prefer to be in a situation with a doctor. And like, I mean, I gave birth in a hospital with the midwives, and if there were anything had gone wrong, a doctor would be there. But it's kind of like a toss up. You have to pick and choose what matters to you. But.
Yeah, I think sometimes also a lot of people get really reliant on like the hospital and medical care, like they don't know what else exists outside
Absolutely.
of it.
I told people about it and they're like, what?
It probably scares them.
What is the secret society of midwife? Yeah, like this is so strange. Like I love talking about it because I'm like, I would highly recommend to anybody who has any kind of
I mean, I think it's fascinating in general that we don't think it's a priority that women should be looking after, or women can look after pregnant women because they've also been through it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm curious about the act of being pregnant and like all the changes that you've been through. How has that all affected you now with you? So the hormones, you said that you've had this equilibrium. Do you still find that?
No, it's been horrible actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's no, I'm being dramatic. It's what I realized after is that kind of like once your placenta comes out, it's literally ripping out all of the hormones. There's a dinner plate size wound in there, but that is what's producing all your hormones. So instantly you're at these like really like ridiculously high levels, and then it's all removed. So you drop down to like the number. I was looking up the numbers of what the actual percentages are in your body, and it's just wild. You go from like peak to nothing.
How do you deal with that?
It's been like, I don't know, I feel like I'm just kind of in survival mode at this point because I'm trying to like look after the baby.
Right.
But I am working with a naturopath and with my doctor to kind of figure out how to level those things out for myself, because it did make me realize that my baseline is off, like something is.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like, I mean, obviously you can't assume that you're going to feel as good as you are during that time when you're just being pumped full of hormones, but I would like to feel better than I was before as well. So that's kind of like the red flag for me.
What kind of steps are you taking with the naturopath to kind of put you back up to where you'd like to be?
For me personally, like it was like my symptoms have been like anxiety and insomnia, and like, which is frustrating because now Finn is like sleeping and I'm not sleeping.
Right.
And so like we figured out that I'm like severely iron deficient. And then magnesium, vitamin D, like kind of like supplementing all those different things. And I think there's something up with my thyroid, so we're going to look into that as well. So definitely hormonal. Yeah. But it's like, even like when they encourage you to like take prenatals, like I didn't realize this too, like prenatal vitamins are for the mother. They're not for the baby. Like the baby will take whatever from you. Right. So like that baby just sucked all the iron and minerals and nutrients out of me, and he's great, but I need to replenish myself. Yeah.
Body wise, how have you felt postpartum?
It's been weird, but good.
Yeah.
I think now good. I think it took me about 8 weeks to feel normal. 6 weeks is when they you go in for your final check, whatever, and they, with an OB, they discuss birth control with the midwives. They give you like a full physical. But that's when you're kind of cleared for physical exercise and to resume having sex. But like, I didn't feel like, we kind of tried a couple times, but like my body felt scary at that point. Like I didn't feel healed. I didn't feel like, even now, I can't remember who said it, but it was like some reality TV person, but they said like the apartment's the same, but they just move the furniture around.
Is that what you feel like is happening to your body?
Kind of, yeah. Like I think, figuring out what feels good and it's like everything's like a little bit different.
Right.
And I think that could be hormonal changes as well, but especially with just like with like thinking about sex, it's like it's taking me a lot more to get like more time to get aroused, and then like my mind is also in a million different places, like, oh, is the baby gonna wake up?
Right.
Like it's all like you can't really, as a woman, I find like my arousal is so like in my brain, like I need to be in a good headspace, and like with a baby it's like, okay, maybe you've only got 5 minutes to like
and how do you how do you rush that all into 5 minutes?
Exactly.
Especially because like I guess it takes a lot, the arousal and what you need to for foreplay will change, and you probably need a lot more
I don't
time.
know what that is as well, because like your body feels different. So it's really like, I think it just takes time.
It's exploring a very new body of yours. How I now I'm really curious about this, because it's a whole new conversation that you have to have with your partner. And how do you do you feel comfortable with with foreplay and like oral sex and just just all that stuff leading up to it?
I mean, like, I think it took that, like, I was really looking forward to the end, to like the 6th week. I'm like, hey, like, it's my graduation. Like, I'm gonna like, and then when we actually tried to have sex, and like it was painful, and I'm like, okay, like this doesn't feel good. Like, and I got pretty upset, and I'm like, okay, now, like I had this idea in my head that I'm just like miraculously gonna be feeling better, and then it's like, okay, no, I'm not. Now, how long is it gonna take? Like, And then you also, because I had that block, now it's like, okay, now my body's a scary place, it hurts, then it's like I'm less inclined to want to try again. And then it did take a couple times, and it was okay, but yeah, it's like, I think really just being patient with yourself and kind of like, and like, also it's hard because I don't know what to ask for, so how do I ask my partner for that? Because I don't know, like I'm getting frustrated with myself, so it's a lot of things to think about. It's a lot of things to think about when it comes to sex, and it should just be feeling. But
I mean, in general, I mean, even for me, when I find that I get out of the headspace when I'm having sex, like either I'll mess up the rhythm, or like I was almost there to orgasm, and then I'll get distracted and I'll completely forget about it.
Yeah.
So now there's all these extra things that you have to think about, which just makes it even more tough, because how do you really know your body if you're not connected with it all?
Exactly.
Oh. What a tough roller coaster.
I think, yeah, again, it's just, I think you have to prioritize those things if it's like something that is important to you, which is hard to do when there's so many other millions of priorities. But it's, for me especially, it's been kind of pushing through those uncomfortable feelings. And
yeah, because like
not giving up.
That's the most important thing, right? Because you're worried about, you're obviously the first thing, and almost I would assume the thing that's always on your mind is Finn. And then I was gonna ask this question too, but like your sexuality, if you had that healthy sex life before and you knew your body and all this other stuff, how do you want to get back to that pre-pregnant Blythe, or is it just like this is who I am now? I may or may not want another child, and so like the way I view sex and my body is going to change.
I think there's kind of a mix of both of those things, because I don't think I'm not ever gonna be pre-baby Blythe.
Yes,
I'm postpartum for life,
true.
right? So, but I think that's interesting, like in a lot of ways, that there's expectation of you to, like, even with your body, to bounce back to something. It's like, you've been praising me this entire 9 months for growing this beautiful big belly and baby, and then instantly it's like, okay, now, so like, how are you gonna like lose all that weight? It's like,
right.
What? So same thing with like when it comes to sexuality, I guess it's like, okay, now I've added this layer of myself, so I wouldn't want to go back to who I was before, but I would like to have that same comfort with my body and ease, I think, around sexuality. So
yeah, it's interesting. Are you thinking about having another?
Yeah, I think so. Like, we want to have one pretty soon, I think. But I also want to make sure that I'm healthy, and that all my vitamins and minerals are completely restored. And I'd like to have just a bit more time with Finn as a little baby too. But I would like them to be fairly close in age, I think.
Yeah. So now I'm going back to something like you were talking about being a vessel, and then this notion of breastfeeding. And like, it's just like, it's either your sexual identity is completely taken away from you, or there's, and I don't know if you've gotten this, but like just that act of breastfeeding in public sometimes, like people get really uncomfortable with it, and they're like, no, you can't do that. But it's just like, but I'm feeding my child.
Yeah, I think I've had only one, like I haven't breastfed in public that many times, because just with the pandemic we haven't been going out that much. I know that it will happen more.
Yeah.
We were sitting at like brunch, and I was feeding him, and then there was like 2 tables of like 2 couples, and like the guys were both facing me, and like both of them were just staring me down, and then like both of the women like looked over and then realized and then snapped at them, and I'm like just watching this whole show here, like, and then Finn gets really distracted when he's eating too, so he's like looking around, and I'm like, stop it, please, hurry up. But yeah, I'm sure that will happen more, and I'm like, I just don't care. So it's,
I mean, that's good. But it has to be kind of, it has to be so hypocritical that like this, you are now a mother, right? Like you move from maidenhood to motherhood, but then there's just aspects of you that can still be considered sexual, but it's just you being a mom. Like it's you being a mom.
Like, don't look if it makes you uncomfortable, or if it's not sexual at all, which is also weird too, because it's like, I got these awesome boobs, but now I'm like told Nick, I'm like, sorry, it's a no-fly zone. Like those are for the baby. I'm like, but then it's weird. Like it's in some ways when you're out in public, it's like, no, that's sexualized, but like in reality, I'm like, no, this is just I'm just feeding the baby with these.
Yeah, and so you have these great breasts, and you know may or may not go away after. But then there's also this concept of you being a MILF. Like, I mean, you may or may not. I probably think what people may call you a MILF, but like it's such a, I don't understand how that when I was younger, I laughed at those jokes about, moms being MILFs, but now I'm just like, when does it end? Like, I feel like there's always these labels.
Well, and it's also like, it creates this weird like binary, because it's like, what, oh, like that's like all the other ones you wouldn't want to, because is it because they're a mom that you wouldn't want to fuck them? Like, I don't get it. Sorry if I'm
No, it's totally fine.
Yeah, it's all very odd.
Yeah, because I guess the MILFs would also be those that have lost weight, or maybe not, like they've lost a lot of that that baby weight, and are, I guess, what a 20 to 30-year-old woman would look like. Maybe?
Yeah. It's like these like largely unachievable beauty standards.
Yeah.
That, like, again, like, why are we exalting this when it's like this person has gone through this process of growing another human being inside their body and like crushing it out of arguably their favorite part of their body. And then you're expecting them to go back to looking like they were.
Yeah, there's always this conversation about getting back to your pre-baby weight, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, because like how has that journey been for you?
I think like I'm a naturally quite slim person. I've had a hard time keeping weight on my whole life, which is a different problem to have.
Right.
But I guess like for me, I did enjoy being able to put on some weight.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. And I've kept a bit of it, and I'm happy with it. So that's definitely a privilege that I'm lucky to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had something else to say, and I forgot what I was gonna say.
I was gonna ask. Well, you kind of answered it, but being someone that was skinnier, it must have been weird to have started gaining weight and then looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, whoa, what is this body that I have now?
It is. I remember saying to Nick at one point too, I'm like, it's weird how naturally, like, all of a sudden I have this belly, and I'm like, it just feels normal. Like, it felt weirder after not having it. Yeah, and how quickly it happens, and you're just like, oh, okay, this is just like how I am now. But,
do you think, and I know that your body has changed, but do you think that you would go back to having a similar sex life that you had before? Obviously with like updates and all that, but do you think that you would want to ever have that again?
Yeah, I would. I think I would like that. Like, I think like I was very happy with our sex life before. I'm still happy with it. It just looks different now, and I think that like both of our love languages is physical affection. So I think that that's a priority for us, and we're going to. That's part of our relationship that we will always put work into. So.
Okay, that's it's pretty nice. Sometimes I feel like some of my friends, it's a real struggle. It's a very big struggle. I guess maybe because they don't even know. They may not fully know who they are, or they may not know like their partner's love languages and stuff like that. And it's hard to have that conversation if you feel so much shame with your body, and you feel that everything has changed now and you don't know what to do to get that back.
Yeah.
No, it's the fact that you were very open about who you are. It's a refreshing change, I'm going to say. And it's the reason why I wanted to ask you to be on here, because like we've had a number of conversations about sex and stuff like that, and you own it, and you don't you may be ashamed, but you don't show that you're ashamed of anything. And it's something that I wish that like your energy could be like very similar to how other women especially have see their bodies, see their sex lives and all that with their partners too.
Yeah, I would hope so too. I think it's hard, but again, like being socialized to not talk about, to be a sexual being, but don't talk about it, or don't like actually figure that out for yourself what that means. Is
there something about what would you like to do when it comes to raising a child? Like or do you have any specific thoughts in mind with how you would raise a boy in today's society? With you also like in queer spaces and with diversity and inclusion, are there any things that you've thought about when it comes to that?
I mean, I think I've thought about all those different things, yeah. And I think really just just trying to raise a kind and considerate person who is able to, be whoever they want to be, and to introduce them to these spaces, to have it be a comfortable place for them, whoever they want to be, whoever they are.
Does gender ever come up into like, have you thought about like gender neutrality, or like how does that look? Because I know sometimes it gets really hard with people, and also just like always reminding yourself of how much we genderize everything.
Yeah, I think it's, especially with raising a child, it's difficult, because I feel like gender neutrality is a bit of a spectrum with children too, because like I was reading about article about how people have been choosing to raise their children from birth completely gender neutral until they they vocalize their own their own choice of gender, which would be so difficult because then you're like, hey, like you can never have like anyone else change their diapers and like just all these. It's very, but again, it's like that people feel like they have a right to know those things.
Yeah.
It's all, and that it makes people very uncomfortable. It's all, it's again, so I think for us, I think just following the baby. And like especially when it comes with kids, it's just toys at the beginning, right? So just introducing gender neutral and like both boys and girls toys, like whatever he wants to do, he can do, and just kind of listen to him. And
I feel like if I were to walk into a Toys R Us, everything is gendered.
Yeah, it is. I get anxiety going into the places. Only wooden toys for you. Only 5 of them. That's it. You play with the pots and pans. That's it. Yeah.
What do you wish that you could say to other parents or people? First of all, actually, I should say, do you feel like you get judgments from other parents or other people in general?
I mean, I haven't experienced much yet. I'm sure people think things, but I've nothing overtly. Yeah.
I guess you're also just not on any of those like mommy forums. So
I see a lot of judgment, being pitched at each other, but
it's tough. Like I don't understand why everyone. Maybe everyone wants to give you their 2 cents, but it's
a lot of unsolicited advice for sure, a lot of that. But yeah, no, and I mean, like there's a little bit of judgment, I think, because I think things will happen, like will be more judgment as like our parenting styles become evident. Like we were talking to another couple who have kids. They're 2-year-old and 4 months old, and I was watching them, and I was like, "Oh, you're practicing like respectful parenting," and they're like, "Yes." And this woman, Janet Lansbury, is this kind of she's pioneered this. I'm sure there's other people, but I've read her book. It's about like treating children as thinking, feeling people, and not being condescending to them. So like, there's no rewards, there's no punishment, there's no yelling. Like you would speak to them as you would speak to a friend, and you help them kind of find creative solutions to things. So I know that that's going to be something that and that's what they said as well, that it makes people uncomfortable because it's so different from the way that often people in our generation were raised. Yeah. But to see their 2-year-old daughter who is like empathetic and intelligent and just to see that it works, it gave me a lot of confidence in my decision to kind of follow that path. So
yeah, that is nice. I don't know if you had parents that were like this, but I mean, I also have parents that were immigrants, and so like they came from a very specific culture, and I got, there was a lot of spanking, there was like yelling and stuff like that.
We never spanked, definitely a lot of yelling, timeouts, and go to your rooms. And,
You're grounded. For what? You're grounded. Yeah. I think the new generation of kids are gonna have it. Like it's so nice to see that way of parenting. I feel like this new generation, how we're raising children now, is going to, it's gonna have such better relationships with people, and it's the step in the right direction.
Like even just like validating their emotions and teaching them how to manage them themselves. Yeah. Like it's just such a like very fundamental skill that you like.
But it feels like it's such a foreign concept.
Yeah. And even like with like a child who's having a tantrum or whatever, it's like, I know you wanted the blue cup and you got the green cup, and I'm sorry, you must be really angry about that. Sometimes that's all they need. They just need to feel like, okay, you heard me, you get it. And it's like, okay, I don't understand why. I don't understand why. That seems like a really dumb thing to be upset about, but them just feeling seen is oftentimes all it takes to kind of diffuse the situation.
And I guess it's really hard to like see how a child would see the situation.
Yeah, you cannot try and do that.
We have too much.
There's no logic. Yeah, and their worlds are so small. They're just, everything is new and they're figuring it all out for the first time. So,
what is the best compliment you've received now being a new mother?
That's a tough one. Someone told me that you'd think that I have 4 children and not 1, and not be our first, and it just was so validating to be like, oh, like I'm doing okay. And I think that it was validating to just hear that my instincts have been correct, and that kind of what I'm trying to exude for him and like what I'm trying to do for him is palpable. So,
what wisdom do you wish that you can impart to Nick to help you and your needs more? Like, I'm not saying he's not a bad partner, but like if there is anything more that you could ask for.
I mean, he's pretty incredible. I'm very lucky. We're both very lucky. I think it's hard, I think, especially for the non-birthing parent, because they don't have that connection with the baby. Like, literally, we're in tune with each other. Like,
Right.
we're the same cells. So, like, I feel like in that way, it's been easier for me. And so I find part of my practice has been to, like, step back and let him figure it out for himself. But I think it's hard when I try and give him a suggestion, he hears it as criticism because he wants to have that connection and doesn't. So it's hard, I think, for both of us responding from a place of ego. So
That's
it's like,
true.
I think I try and remind him that we're on the same team.
Yeah.
And that the ultimate, or what we're both trying to accomplish, is to keep the baby alive and happy. So
Yeah, that's true. I wasn't actually thinking about it from the male perspective. Yes. Yeah, there's not that connection that you naturally would have.
yeah, and I think especially for Nick too, it's like there's a bit of envy there, like that he can't soothe him as easily as I can. I mean, he doesn't have boobs too, so like that's always like the bippity boppity boob, like it's probably gonna fix it. But yeah, I think like finding those ways in his own unique way of soothing him and parenting, and it's like for a woman or for the birthing parent, you are a parent or you're a mother or like the birther from the second that you are pregnant, whereas for the other parent, it's not until the baby's born. So it's kind of like for 9 months I've had time to prepare myself, and I've already felt these changes happen, and I've already become a mother, whereas for Nick, he became a father only when the baby was born. So
Right.
there's a bit of like a learning curve there, I think.
There really is, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's not easy, I guess, on both ends, which is the joys of parenthood.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you very much for taking time to talk
Thank
to me. Is there any way, how can we find you on social media? What are you doing? I know you're probably on maternity leave at the moment.
Yeah, I'm taking, like, it's not maternity break, it's maternity leave. Yeah, definitely not a break. Yeah, I'm on maternity leave until probably, early 2023. Is that what the year
Oh, wow.
Yeah, or I guess, because it's December, so to December, yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm a fine jewelry designer. You can find here's my shameless plug. You can find my jewelry on Instagram at Elizabeth_Blythe.
Nice.
Or ElizabethBlythe.com.
It's gorgeous, the work you do, yeah.
Custom jewelry at me.
Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Okay. I would like to thank you for tuning in today. Download, leave a review, follow, and share this episode and the podcast with your friends, family, really whomever you like. You can find me on Just Curiosity Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and you can email me at justcuriositypod@gmail.com, as I would absolutely love to know your thoughts, insights, comments, and all those juicy stories. But most of all, stay curious, friends. I'm Shelly D, and this has been Just Out of Curiosity.